Well, hello. Hi, Noah.
Hi.
Hi, Maya. How you doing?
Good.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on the show and just talking about your story and your journey. How about we start with you telling us a little bit of background about you both?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll start. Spoiler alert, we have a 2.5-year-old now who's like creeping out of her bed when she's supposed to be napping. So apologies in advance for us being all over the place. But I'm Maya Grobel,
I'm Noah Moskin.
and we had a pretty interesting journey to parenthood. I'm a clinical social worker. I'm a psychotherapist, and my job has changed a little bit, that now I primarily work with infertility patients out here in Los Angeles and in West Los Angeles. And Noah is a TV producer.
Yeah, I produce TV, mostly like unscripted and reality stuff. And so when we decided to make a movie about our journey through all of this,
We sort of decided very early on in our journey that we were going to try to document this, not knowing where it was going to go or anything like that. So
Document your fertility journey, and that seemed like it would be a very natural fit. You seemed very comfortable in front of the camera.
yeah, we just sort of decided to do it, and cut to 5 years later, we didn't quite know that's where we were going to head. Like a 5-year journey. But we do have a full-length feature that is coming out on Netflix on January 15th, and it's currently out on iTunes and Amazon and Vimeo on demand, and it's called One More Shot. And so we're really excited about that. And so we have the movie, and then we did resolve our fertility crisis, so to speak, through embryo donation. So spoiler.
Let's start kind of in the beginning process
Yeah.
when you started filming and you documented your journey. Like, how old were you? How long have you been together as a couple? What were some of those statistics?
Yeah. So, okay, let's see if we can rewind. So we met in college. I was 20, he was 21. And had we started trying then, we probably would have been successful, right? But he always tells me if we started trying then, that I would be a single mom. So,
I don't know if we were ready.
we
at
were
that
we
point.
were quite ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been together now for almost 18 years. So we were together for about 8.
We got married in 2008. We
Yeah.
started trying around
2010, and just right after I turned 30. So that seemed
Pretty
okay.
young. Yeah.
I feel like I was waiting too long or whatever else. But also, it's like when you're young, you just spend so long trying not to get pregnant, so that you just don't really know. And I think we just weren't that educated in terms of what it takes to conceive. So
And we also didn't necessarily, you don't think anything's wrong
Yeah, that's true.
or the matter. It's just, it isn't until you're trying for an extended amount of time and things aren't happening that you feel like, oh, something is amiss
Off.
here.
So we started trying, I was 30 in 2010. And, it's like one of those things where you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're young, you do yoga, you're healthy, you're fine. And we did some preliminary tests, but not the right ones, essentially. I did my hormone test, my FSH, my LH. We did a semen analysis after maybe 8 to 10 months or something like that of trying naturally. And, everything looked fine. So we just kept going. And then we were put on I was put on Clomid, which I don't know if anybody's been on Clomid out there. It's pretty intense. And that was just hard. And, and I think what's hard is the OB never told us to do anything different. So we tried sort of naturally with ovulation tests and all that kind of stuff for about, I would say 18 tries or something like that. So like a year and a half-ish. And then we went to see a reproductive endocrinologist. And the second we did that, and that's actually the first time we started documenting. Again, not knowing exactly where it was going to go, but it's something we kind of always did to help us sort of process and, anyway. So we saw the reproductive endocrinologist, and kind of one thing led to another. And I quickly found out that I had diminished ovarian reserve I think I was 32 at that point.
And Noah, when you were evaluated, did everything come out okay on your side? Or was there any...
I think I'd actually totally forgotten about when I had to do my analysis the first time. It was just this very interesting experience. Like for the guy, for all of this, it's a little different to go through this, but as you know, for the guy, and you're naturally thinking like, oh, I'm fine, everything's cool. And then the first time the doctor's like, no, you should get your stuff checked out. I remember having to like go to this weird clinic in downtown Los Angeles, and it was just like, this was my getting jumped into this world was like, you know, I walked into a lab and they're like, go in that room and then, you know, do your stuff. And it came out and I'm like, who do I give this to? And, you know, the answer was like, oh, just put it on the counter. And I was like, okay, that's it. That's science.
It was a weird
but yeah, it was an interesting experience. I actually like totally forgotten about that first time, but yeah, everything checked out, and you know, it took a while for us to kind of figure out, you know, just what was wrong, and to be able to, we just knew something was wrong. It took a while to sort of, you know, kind of put our fingers on the things that weren't adding up.
I mean, I guess I had ovarian reserve issues, or diminished ovarian reserve, but we also spent a long time evaluating my fallopian tubes, and I had a laparoscopic surgery. Like, it's stuff that just, now we look back and we're like, oh yeah, all that stuff happened. When you're in it, it's so intense and you're so scared and you're like, wait, something's wrong. I have to have a surgery, and, you know, and all this stuff. At the end of the day, we knew our odds of IVF with my eggs were not great, just because it's kind of a numbers game, right? So anybody who's like, if you have 6 eggs or 6 follicles, maybe you get 3 eggs out of that, maybe 2 are good, maybe you get 1 embryo, you know? So it's like, when we numerically did it, and when you think about how much money you're spending on all this stuff, it was scary. But we did do 1 round of IVF in 2012 or 2013, I think. And that was just a total bust. It was like, I didn't stimulate well. I felt disgusting. Like, the whole thing was just really hard. And we did end up getting 3 good eggs, and all 3 fertilized, and then everything fell apart in the dish. So it's like, we didn't even get to transfer. And I think that was just such a devastating moment, because you assume that if you're doing all this stuff and you're in your early 30s and you're paying the money and you've got the best doctor in, you know, your area, that like, this is just going to work. And then to be told you don't even have anything to put back in, it's like, what are you talking?
Did anyone prepare you for possible outcomes or any kind of support?
Yeah, I mean, the doctor did tell us what our odds were. He was very upfront, very honest
about our odds and the chances we had. But like, you know,
you don't
emotionally,
hear
it. And also you go into those things and, you know, he tells you the odds and the chances, but at the same time, he's saying, you know, of the people I'm going to see today, I think you've got the best chance.
Right. Or it's like, you just need 1 good egg.
You know, all we need is 1, you know, 25% chance, like.
And it wasn't a 25% chance. It was much less.
But like, on, you know, whatever it is, it's like, are you going to say no to that chance? Like, you've come this far, are you going to say no? And I think, you know, and that was, you're just always clinging to that little bit of hope, and that, you know,
that keeps you going.
That keeps you going until the money runs out, or until you're, you know, you just
exhausted.
Can't. Yeah, emotionally exhausted, financially exhausted. Like, you know, as long as there's hope, you're gonna go for it.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't take these odds in Vegas, you know.
No, I remember having those conversations. It's like, if you were like had a 1 in 50 shot on anything, you know, on any bet that you're making, you probably go like, pass.
Yeah.
But you're also betting on yourself and betting on you as a couple. Like, you really want your DNA to show up in your biological child, and that's a very normal desire and want. So I don't think you were alone in wanting those things. So that IVF cycle wasn't exactly a success. What happened next?
So that took a little bit of time. I think you should go up and check. Yeah. So when that IVF cycle didn't work and we had nothing to transfer, we definitely needed to take some time to sort of like reassess the situation. And I really wanted to do 1 more round, because, you know, when you do, I think it's like 3 rounds of IVF, you've got a better shot. So, but we went to this appointment with the doctor, and I remember him saying, he's like, you're going to checkmate yourself financially. And, you know, if you spend the money to do 1 more round with your odds and with your eggs and the chances that you have, you're not going to have enough to do what's going to give you a better guarantee, essentially, not guarantee, but a better chance of having a kid. And so I think it just, this process of reassessing what's important, you know, for us, we really wanted to parent. So yes, you know, sure, it's like you marry somebody and you would love for your child to have their nose, or, you know, all these things that you just kind of fantasize. And I think that's where like the expectation of your life and how you imagine your life going and your family going and all these things, it sort of shifts a little bit, you know. And I think we had to just spend some time reprioritizing and reframing what we wanted. And so rather than trying again with my eggs, I got over it rather quickly, essentially. And we decided, my sister offered to donate eggs to us. I have a younger sister, 3.5 years younger. She wasn't married at the time. She is now. And she had no children. And so the doctor did warn us, you know, having a younger sister. And by that point, she was almost 30. She was like 29.5. So that her age, you know, she wasn't the best candidate, but she was for us because we didn't have to pay her. Yeah. And that's the closest to me that we were going to get. And her numbers were all good. She did all the tests, like her numbers are good. She's very bright. Like she's a great person. So we were so grateful to have that opportunity. So we really got excited about that. She was a resident. She's a doctor. She was finishing her residency. So we had to wait like another 6 months for her to finish. And, you know, it's always this kind of waiting process. While we waited for her, we did a handful of inseminations just because, you know, IUIs, they're there. They're, you know, less expensive. So we just did a bunch of IUIs. And, nothing worked. And then she got ready and she didn't stimulate well either, but, we did finally get to a transfer. So I transferred, she had at the end of the day, and, you know, in our heads, she was going to donate eggs. We were going to save 10 eggs for her and freeze 10. So when she was ready, because she was sort of delaying her process a little bit, being in med school and whatever, you know, and then we were going to have embryos and everybody was going to be happy and that was it. She actually only ended up with 3 embryos, 4 actually. One developed a little late. So we did a transfer. And they didn't look great either. So the doctor was like, let's just get them all in. So we transferred 3 embryos. I was imagining triplets. Noah was like sweating profusely and nothing took. And so again, and then we did one, we waited a month and then we did the last transfer. We called him the Lone Ranger, the sort of last 6-day, developed on day 6, blastocyst. And that didn't work either. So at that point, we were pretty broken, sort of physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally, you know, all of it, because this just takes a lot out of you. You know, anybody who's done egg donation, egg freezing, IVF, it's your body, you just don't feel good for a really long time. Your relationship suffers, your friendships suffer, you know, all these things.
The only thing that can consume your mind sometimes, and you want to feel like you just can enjoy life like everybody else, like your friends, and you can't.
Yeah, and you're just stuck.
Because your life is on hold kind of thing.
Yeah, and so, you know, after it, by that point, we've been trying, you know, for 2 years on our own, essentially. And then, you know, our IVF and my sister's cycle. So it'd been like 3 years at that point. And I think making the film and documenting in the way that we did was actually really helpful for us in processing a lot of this stuff. Because it gave us a different focal point and it gave us a different way to be creative. When you're doing IVF and you're doing all this stuff, it's like you're working really hard and you have nothing to show for it except like 10 extra pounds and like bad skin, right? But with the movie, we could tangibly put something together. And I think it was at the point right around when my sister was donating that we started to interview other couples that had built their families in different ways. And for me, and I was blogging, I was writing about it at Don't Count Your Eggs. And it was really helpful for me to write and connect to people. And people were writing to me from all over the world. And like it's like I started to have a little bit of community, which we didn't have. Like we were the only person or only couple in our friend group that had this going on. And the more I shared and the more I talked about it, the more feedback I got from people and the more I learned about the different ways families can be created. And I think that was just so helpful in feeling like, okay, this is crappy, but we're going to figure this out. And, you know, we interviewed somebody who used a surrogate and had an egg donor, somebody who adopted, somebody who had an egg donor, right? So all these different ways, and you start to go, oh, okay, there's not just one way to do this. You know, and of course, there's both this process of sort of grieving. I mean, you're grieving the loss of, you know, being able to have a glass of wine and a night in bed and have a baby, you know, and then you're grieving your genetics, and then you're grieving sort of like the whole process of all of it, and trying to hold and contain your fears the whole time, while at the same time being hopeful and open to the possibilities, you know. And so I think we were constantly doing this, you know, juggling, and it's a very personal experience. You know, what's right for each person is really different. And so after the egg donation cycle with my sister didn't work, we were kind of back to the drawing board, and we were trying to figure out, are we going to just get another egg donor? I mean, at that point, you know, you're in the hole like 30 grand or something like that, you know? And so we were trying to figure out what came next. And I was looking into frozen egg banks. And one of my doctors, I had several doctors, but one of the doctors suggested this place in Seattle that they had frozen egg banks. And, you know, so, you know, one thing led to another. And basically I was calling around, and I had a conversation with the woman, the donor coordinator. Yeah. And so, you know, we were looking for, I'm half Japanese, so we were looking for a match in some ways. And then I don't know exactly how it happened, but I knew that they had embryos there. So I asked about their embryo donation program, and we're back. Oh, is she in bed? We'll see how this goes. It's a whole new adventure now, right? So I was asking the donor coordinator about, you know, I think I just said, like, do you have anything that's half Japanese? She called it the pantry. She said, well, you know, let me see what's in the pantry, you know, and she sort of looked it up, and they actually had 2 different sets that had been made. So 2 embryos in each set that had been made from an egg donor and then the husband of the infertile couple that ended up donating them. So one just felt right to me. It was the woman had 3 children of her own. A child was made. I just wanted something to work.
Yeah.
You know,
you needed a win at this point.
I needed a win. We didn't, you know, I don't care what color hair this kid has. I don't care. You know, I want this child to be healthy, and I want to get out of the lifestyle that we were living, where it's like you can't do anything. You can't go anywhere because you don't know if you're going to be in a cycle and when you're going to get your period, and it just becomes crazy making. So to me, it felt really right almost immediately. And I think it took you a little bit longer to kind of wrap your head around the idea that, so I had grieved my genetic loss. It's really not that much of a loss, but, you know, but letting go of my genetics much earlier.
It's been a longer process.
Yeah, like I knew like that was the issue, you know, but he, you know, his sperm was always fine. So he had the opportunity to have a genetic child. And it took a little time for us to really talk about and process, well, what does this mean to us? What does the genetic link mean? You know, and eventually probably it took about 6 months, I would say. And we were just like this, it just kind of felt right after a while. I don't know if something clicked for you.
I don't know what it was that, like, I don't know that there was anything specific for me that turned it, that made me okay with, you know, whatever we did not being, you know, or specifically my genetics. You know, I think, again, like the guy's perspective in a situation where the wife's situation is...
You want to say that the wife is the problem.
That's not the problem.
That's what you want to say. The issue? That's an nice way of saying
well, that it was diagnosed as that was the reason.
Right. The medical
the medical diagnosis is
on
not
the female
on
side.
you. You know, I think your natural feeling is like, oh, well, why can't it be part me? But then I think it came down to, like, we wanted a child more than we wanted
genetics.
More than genetics mattered, and I think the more I personally thought about that, you know, when it came to, like, okay, for genetics, like, why is that important?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's important because of a bloodline, or because you wanted to have your nose, because what you think, you know, I liked baseball, so my kid's going to be great at baseball.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of break those things down, and it's like, for me at least, it was like, it just doesn't matter. Like, bloodline, we're not royalty, so that doesn't matter. baseball. I played through high school. My kid could play through college if there's somebody else's genetic. You know, like these things don't matter. They're so arbitrary and they're so personal. And for lack of, I felt like I was being selfish. If I was holding on to like it has to be part of me, that was a selfish thing. And I think when you're trying to make a baby, you have every right to be selfish about, you know, how you want to go about doing that, because it's your baby and it's your life and it's your family. But for me, like having a family and having a family sooner
was the goal.
Was the goal. And like, so for me to be selfish about genetics was getting in the way of that. Like, why? I didn't need to, that didn't need to happen. So,
well, it sounded like that whole entire journey helped build you to that process of letting the genetic piece go, and so you settled on this embryo donation, and then once you both came together with that, how long before you tried to implant?
Thanksgiving, we were in Seattle, so I found it like in the fall, and like then we transferred Thanksgiving
2013. We would have gone up.
Yeah. And we transferred in July. Now I had false start. It's always been hard for me to transfer. My body to cooperate with medication. It's like it always does the opposite of what it's supposed to do. So we tried for June and then it didn't work. And remember, we canceled our tickets and it was this whole thing. And we ended up transferring on July 11th. So it was Thanksgiving the year before until the summer. So it was a good amount of time. And part of that was trying to prepare, you know, our body and my body, and we did want to make sure that we were comfortable. Now it's, you know, you're saying it's selfish and that's how you feel, but for some people there's just certain things that are important and certain things that are not important. So I think everybody, it's a personal journey between an individual, between a couple, you know, whatever.
How was your relationship at this time? Was it hard to keep your connection on track, or did this feel like it was you guys against the world?
And it always felt like it was us against the world. I think when you have a limited community in terms of like who you are talking with this about, like it feels like it's you against the world. When you have, you know, we did some count at some point, you know, like 60 babies had been born since we had been trying. And so you know,
you just feel so behind.
You feel so behind, and like through nobody else's fault in your life. It's like, but it feels like it's you against everybody else. And so I think we always kind of had that connection. But I think once we figured out embryo donation and we knew that was the goal and it was an attainable goal, you know, I think we sort of it became tighter in terms of like what we were going for. Had we tried to do this, I don't think we ever would have jumped to this as our first thought. Right. You know, I think when you know, doing embryo donation is definitely jumping into the deep end of all of this, whereas an IUI is kind of more getting your toes wet, you know? So yeah, I think just the way things evolved and the way things timed out, you know, you have your ups and downs. It's certainly a strain on a relationship and a marriage.
And I think it goes in waves, you know. I mean, also we were together for so long before. I think we had a very strong foundation, which had we not, I don't know if we would have made it through. You know, it's really hard. It's hard in so many different ways when baby making comes out of the bedroom, and it's a process and it's expensive, and, you know, and there's a lot of feelings and frustrations and hormones and, you know, all of these things. I mean, I have a very patient and supportive, loving husband, you know, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think that helped us a lot. But there were times when we were more apart. And I think there were times that we came together and we learned how to be in a crisis together. And we learned how to listen to each other and how different our emotional needs are. And, you know, I think for a lot of men, there is this sense of like, I just want to make it better and I'm here to support, but then their own emotional needs get kind of put aside, but they don't even know how to get in touch with it sometimes, you know. And I think that's sort of like the stereotypic idea of all of this, but there's some truth to it. And I think that was true for us in some ways. And I didn't want him to tell me it was going to be okay all the time. I wanted him to tell me this sucks and I'm right here with you. And, and that was a shift.
It took a while because I think, like Maya said, you're, my personality, I think a lot of guys, is just like problem solver. It's like, okay, there's an issue, let's figure it out. Mm-hmm. But you're talking higher science here, like,
This isn't a simple math equation.
Yeah. Like, I coasted my way through the end of college. I didn't go to med school or anything like this. Like, it's a lot. And you realize at a certain point, just saying like, hey, we're going to do it, doesn't cut it. And it's not always the most helpful, but sometimes it's like all you can sort of give. So I think you just learn, the longer the process, you learn how to communicate better. You learn how to support differently and support better. And I think to Maya's point, like, had we not had a very solid foundation in our relationship, that
would have been harder.
It would have been a lot harder.
And, we had a lot of family support too, which not everybody has. And I work with this population now just in my therapy practice. And, I'm grateful we had parents that were on board with us, and that's not the case for everyone. And so I think, and we built a community through just the film and interviewing people, and through, my blog and whatever else. It's like we had people that were going through this and we could check in with, and that got it, and I think when you're going through this, you don't have family support or you don't have a community, it's really, really isolating. You just feel kind of insane a lot of the time. So I think that was helpful.
And so you implanted the donated embryo, and did it work the first time?
Yeah, I mean, this is a part that we sort of skipped over in the movie a lot because it just, we were like, oh my God, this is just so tedious already. But we transferred the embryo in July, and then my first beta was 23. So the clinic called and they said, well, looks like you're a little bit pregnant. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we've gone through all of this. This is donated embryo. What do you mean I'm a little bit pregnant? They wanted the number to be much higher. So the beta
like
is
10 times as high.
They did. Well, the first one, I think they were sort of flexible. Somewhere between 50 and 100 would have been like a base hit. But 23 was most likely, they said, a chemical pregnancy. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is just not okay. And to be honest, the pregnancy part was a lot harder. I felt like if you went through all the infertility stuff, you're going to have a beautiful pregency. And
you should get a pass.
You're cool. You're just, you're good to go. But I had to take blood tests every 2 days for about 2 weeks. My numbers did rise, but they were always way behind. And then the shape of the sac didn't measure right. And then, so it's this kind of thing where you're like,
so you were basically put on high alert through the entire process until she came.
Basically, and then I had, and then every condition you could get, like I had a subchorionic hematoma at 8 weeks, where I was just bleeding profusely in the middle of the night, and I was like, oh, at 8 weeks, right, or something like that, and they were like, okay, and so I was on bed rest and couldn't move, and then I was cleared at week 14. I remember we went to San Francisco. My sister got married, and and then I came back, and the next day bleeding through my glands, and I had Previa. It was like a low-lying placenta situation, and it just went on like that. And then my birth was pretty traumatic, or her birth was pretty traumatic as well. And I had placenta accreta, and had to, I thought I was going to give birth and then hold her and nurse her and all that. And instead, it's like...
She got rushed to the operating room. And
the doctor looks at Noah and goes, do you want to stay with the baby, or do you want to go to the operating room with your wife? And I'm like, stay with the baby! And they're like rushing me off. And so I ended up having surgery and blood transfusion. So it was just this kind of really traumatizing experience. And, and honestly, like when I just now in my work, I hear this so much. Nobody gets a pass. You think like if you struggle in one way, you just get a pass. But this is the story of so many people. And I think that's what makes our film kind of universal. I mean, you can generalize the film to be about struggle and about, a relationship under stress and all these things, because I think that's like at the heart of it. But it's also about, different ways families can come together and that nothing is easy in this, you know, and I think that's what we really learned. But then I remember somebody saying, well, you've gone through all this stuff, but you're going to get an awesome kid. And I think that part is true. Like, we have a pretty awesome, I mean, she's a pain when it comes to sleeping, but other than that, she's fabulous.
So tell us a little bit about your daughter.
So she's 2 and 9 months. Yeah, about 2.5. And she's just a fireball. And, you know, those moments
where was she born?
2015, March of 2015.
So this was like a full 5-year journey for you.
Yeah, it was 2010 to 2015. Yeah. It's like nobody wakes up one morning and decides I'm going to have a baby through embryo donation. Like, it's a process. And I think for so many people, you have to sometimes let go of the outcome and just do what you feel like you need to do along the way to know that you've done everything you could.
Well, I just think you both are so strong and brave, and thank you so much for telling your story, because it's just going to help so many other people in such a platform. And then, so everyone needs to go watch One More Shot, the film. There, just give a quick plug about all your social media and your websites.
Yeah.
Or how you can watch the film.
Is, on Netflix as of January. You can also buy it, rent it, however you like, on iTunes, Amazon, Vimeo on Demand, Vudu. And you can find us on Facebook at One More Shot Film, Twitter, One More Shot Doc, and onemoreshotfilm.com is the website.
onemoreshotfilm.com. Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for just being out there and giving everybody a chance and a hope. And you have this beautiful family now that you've created. So you're such an inspiration.
Thank you. Yeah, I think if you're open to different ways to have a family, that you've got a good chance.
And I think as much as we got a baby out of this, I think we also got this really amazing and supportive community out of this, and sort of people that speak the same language as us. And I think had we been connected with that earlier, this journey might have been
a lot different.
Fewer tears.
Yeah.
But no, it's great to be part of this community, this club that nobody initially wants to be a part of.
Right.
All here.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Cool, thanks. Bye.
Bye.